What is up, everybody? This is Joshua Howell from the Nerf Herders Assemble podcast. This isn't an actual podcast episode, but it's just a little segment I thought I would film. We talked about it today in the 10th episode of our third season of the podcast. We talked about Dark Horse Comics losing the comic rights to another major property from their library. In this instance, it was the Aliens, Predator, Alien versus Predator, all those things Alien Xenoverse related. They lost the rights to. Disney is getting them as part of their buyout. When they bought Fox, they got the rights to these, and so it was something we were obviously seeing coming. And it's going to take effect, I think, on January 1st as the cutoff for Dark Horse printing anything related to the Xenoverse. And, I have just been a huge fan of Dark Horse for years. I've got a lot of their comics. As you can see, I'm a big DC fan. This angle always only captures the DC books that I have. There's plenty of Marvel books over here, but I am admittedly a bigger DC fan, or at least I collect more DC stuff. But I have collected a lot of Star Wars stuff over the years. Star Wars and Hellboy and Aliens and Buffy and a lot of other things that Dark Horse has taken care of. They have taken care of a lot of properties as far as the comic book sides of things, and I wanted to film a little thing of just showcasing my collection of Dark Horse comics. And I was going to just film this and do a little production with it, but I thought it'd be just as easy just to do it live, and show them off and just kind of talk about some of them. So I wanted to start off not with Aliens and Predator, but with Star Wars. This is actually the first comic that I ever got. Let's see here. There you go. This is the first Dark Horse comic that I ever owned. And it's the first issue of the Heir to the Empire adaptation based on the Timothy Zahn books. And I grew up not being able to afford brand new comics. My dad would take me on the weekends, every couple of weekends, to this place in Council Bluffs, Iowa called Canesville Collectibles. And it's mainly a record store. It's a vinyl record store. And they have a small kind of back section for books, and they have an even smaller section, which is basically a long closet for comics. And basically, I think they would just buy out long boxes from other comic stores. And, there weren't ever in any order. There wasn't like a DC section and a Marvel section and, all the different genres or titles or anything. It was just basically a lot of random comics in a bunch of long boxes stacked up in a very hot, very small closet. And I would spend hours on a Saturday trying to find the issue that came after this one, of Batman comics and Superman and a lot of different things. And we were driving home from that once, and there was this small new comic book store that didn't last very long. But I was like, Dad, that's an actual comic book store. Let's go in there. And he was like, I don't know, but he took me in there. And when we were going to this Canesville Collectibles, those comics were 25 cents a piece. I could go home with a stack for a couple of bucks. This comic was $2.95, brand new, and it was on the rack. It was brand new, and I was looking at it, and I was like, that's Luke Skywalker there. I don't know who this guy is in the blue with the red eyes, but that's Luke Skywalker. And I was obsessed with Star Wars as a kid. And to see that this was some type of continuation of the movies, I was like, back then you only had 4, 5, and 6. There were no prequels. There were no sequels. It was just the movies. And this was heralded as the unofficial 7, 8, and 9 back then. This was the unofficial sequel trilogy. And this was the first issue of it. And I convinced my dad to get it, and begrudgingly he did. And it sparked my love for Star Wars comics and my love for Dark Horse. And it was an amazing adaptation. I went on to get the books. I went on to listen to the amazing audio series, which came with their own soundtracks and everything. And then I was, thankful enough to get the, hardcover collection of the Throm Trilogy. And, this is it's a beautiful book. These are kind of hard to find. These are the original hardcovers. So they came out with the Throm Trilogy, and that was a huge hit for Dark Horse, adaption wise. Then they came out with the Dark Empire Trilogy, which I also have the collection for. And again, I loved these hardcovers. These were really nice, really well put together hardcovers. The art was amazing. They looked like the characters when they needed to look like the characters. Dark Empire Trilogy was an amazing follow-up to the Thrawn Trilogy. Then they had the Crimson Empire, which I don't have a cover for, but this is actually a collection of the individual comics that someone bound together that I bought. I believe Tim Benson, a friend of mine, did this. For those of you in the Unbound, custom bound comics group on Facebook, you'll recognize that name. But I believe I bought this off of him. This is the collection of the Crimson Empire saga. And oh, look, there's Buffy right there. There's a nice little page for Buffy. But yeah, so this was another saga, another Star Wars big saga for Dark Horse. And then this custom bound book collects episodes 1 through 6. So I believe it's just the Star Wars Omnibus, the complete saga. If you've ever seen that book on the shelves, I just took that and put it in a hardcover. I'll probably do Just Jacket so it matches these other Star Wars books. But so these books here, they sit up nice on the shelf. I've got a shelf behind the computer here that shows all of my hardcover Star Wars books from before Disney took those and made them non-canon. So basically, any of the old style books with the original crew, the Han Solo and Leia and Luke, I've got all of those books up there. So Star Wars was my first introduction into Dark Horse Comics, and this was another property that they lost to Disney, and I was kind of sad about that. But again, it happens. It's not like we didn't expect that to happen. But Disney actually made Disney and Marvel made, or at least Marvel made Star Wars comics before, so it was kind of coming back to them. They also, Star Wars is a more family friendly property, so it kind of makes sense. And they've put out comics. They put out comics immediately. As far as Aliens and Predator goes, this is traditionally an R-rated topic, subject matter. This is the 30th anniversary collection of the original Aliens comic series. And this was basically the direct follow-up to the events in the film, in the 1986 Aliens film by James Cameron. And this was huge for Dark Horse. They followed up the events of the film, and a lot of people loved the stories that Dark Horse put out in the form of comics more than the sequels, the Aliens 3, the non-Gibson stuff that went on the screen, and of course Aliens was a Resurrection or whatever the fourth one was, and basically Dark Horse put out these amazing comics, and that was over 30 years ago, and they also got the rights to Predator, so they put out the Predator comics as well, and I believe this came out, yes, before Predator 2 was even conceived as a film. These comics were put together. In fact, the comic cover was a main influence on the actual cover or poster for Predator 2. And so that's the 30th anniversary book of that. And then Dark Horse was like, well, we've got the Aliens, we've got the Predator, why not combine them? So 30 years ago, they came out with Aliens versus Predator. This happened in 1990. And it was something that, you know, they came up with and they put together, and they've been putting out these comics for a while, a lot longer, long time before the AVP movies that were terrible. And talking about the AVP, that's an example of, at least the first one was rated PG-13. And while you could sell that to more people and you could get more people in the theater, it was a terrible film. And yes, AVP Requiem was rated R, but that was also a terrible film. Dark Horse and the fans of Dark Horse always prided themselves in having better stories and better writing in their comics than what you saw on the screen. So if you know, Alien and Aliens and Predator were fantastic movies, and they were fantastic universes, and they fantastic stories. They were great. They were excellent. Even the Predators, the plural one with Adrian Brody, was pretty good. But the original Predator and the original two Aliens films, Alien and Aliens, were fantastic. And a lot of people wish the remaining of those films, you know, were of that quality, and it just didn't happen. And so it was nice to see those comics, those storylines, those characters continued in the comics and taken better care of, and better stories. And so those comics are really great. And then, you know, they took it farther from there. So this is a collection of more of the original Aliens series. These came out starting in 1989. The Nightmare Asylum and Earth War were big Aliens arcs. So that's a collection, hardcover collection of that. They've had more recent ones. Aliens Defiance. This is a library edition of that book by Brian Wood and Tristan Jones. This book was fantastic. It's a great edition. This is another thing I love Dark Horse for, these library editions. These books are huge. You can really enjoy the artwork in here by just, you know, being able to look and scan the page, because it's so huge. I love Dark Horse for their library editions. They came out with this series after the Prometheus movie came out. They came out with the complete Fire and Stone saga, which had comics in the Prometheus kind of time and era, comics and Aliens, comics and Alien versus Predator, and comics and Predator. So it was a full 4-piece crossover event called Fire and Stone. And this was a huge event. And in fact, this book I'm very happy to own, because it's kind of hard to find without paying a crap ton of money for. Then they had the sequel called Life and Death. And that, again, had comics featured in the Prometheus world, Aliens, Predator, and AVP. So this was the follow-up to the events of the Fire and Stone book. So another book I'm very happy to own. And then another more recent one. This is the library edition of Aliens Dead Orbit by James Stocco. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. My apologies for butchering that. But this collects the 4-part alien story, Dead Orbit. And it's a great book. A lot of these, especially if I've already read them, I try to keep them in the plastic. I know that's kind of silly. But if I've already read the stories, I keep them in the plastic. If I haven't, obviously I take it out. The other Aliens Predator stuff that I have, this is a custom bound book that I made called, it's basically Batman, Superman, Green Lantern versus Aliens and Predator. So there are a lot of crossover events that Dark Horse did with DC. The Batman versus Predator books, there's a trilogy, and they're fantastic. If you've never read Batman versus Predator, you should look those up. And then there were Batman versus Alien books and Superman versus Alien books. I believe there were some Superman versus Predator books in here as well. But just fantastic artwork. You had Batman in his suit. That's the second book called Blood Match. You did have Superman versus Aliens and Superman versus Predator. And then you had Green Lantern versus Aliens, which is a more modern book. But yeah, this was, I just found all of those and made a collection and this was my custom bound book of that. So the DC Universe meets the Dark Horse Xenoverse. That was a great collection. And then I also have one other custom book it's called Overkill. And basically, I took that title from a Witchblade and Dark Horse crossover that also included Aliens and Predator. So that was one of the covers there. And then it also includes some other crossovers that involved Aliens and Predator with Dread and the Terminator and even RoboCop. So a lot of crossover events included in this. And I liked it. Top Cow and Image also had a hand in some of these. But Dark Horse had the Aliens and the Predator side of that. So that's my Overkill book. Love that collection. And then speaking of Predator, to be in line with some of their other library editions, they also put it out this the original comic strips series for the Terminator. And again, this was a follow-up to James Cameron's movie. This was a follow-up to the 1984 movie. And I think the main book in here is, Tempest and One Shot. So excellent collection in Dark Horse's beautiful library editions. So that's the Aliens and Predators side of, or at least collection that I have of Dark Horse books. And I'm going to just put a couple of these over here so I can have some room. My next collection of Dark Horse books would be the original Umbrella Academy slipcases. These are not the reprinted versions that have come out recently. Thank God, Umbrella Academy has gotten some new life lately with that Netflix series, which is pretty good. Second season is about to come out. I'm super excited for it. But for a long time, we just had the Umbrella Academy Dallas and the Umbrella Academy Apocalypse Suite. Apocalypse Suite being the first one, and we were just waiting. We were waiting for Hotel Oblivion for forever, and it finally has come out. Thankfully, because of the success of the Netflix show, and the library edition and slipcase edition of that is coming out soon. But they reprinted these slipcases, which are really hard to find. And I was always a huge fan. I'm going to take this out here. I was always a huge fan of My Chemical Romance. And the fact that this was a comic written by the lead singer, Gerard Way, I was just like, yes, this is me. I love it. And I came out of the military and I was living in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I went into a used bookstore, and these two books in their slipcases were on the shelf. And this book, let's see, is this the one or is it the other one? Yes, this book is signed by Gerard Way and Gabriel Ba, who is the artist. And I mean, these stories are amazing. And I traveled a lot in the military. I wasn't able to really collect a lot of things or hold on to a lot of things because I moved around a lot. So I was just kind of getting back into comics when I came back from the military, and I learned about this comic by picking this up. I was like, wait, Gerard Way, that's the lead singer of My Chemical Romance. And I saw these books on the shelf at this used bookstore, and they were signed. I mean, signed. That's so bizarre. And they were in pretty darn good condition. Some of them has a little bunting on the corners and everything, but amazing condition. And these are hard to find nowadays. The original graphic novel collections, the original collections of these. And I love that. There's this like film in front of the title page. And it's just, it's fantastic. I love these stories. I'm so happy we're getting a second season. I wonder if it's going to follow the Dallas storyline. I guess I could just look that up, but I don't like ruining things for myself if I can, just experience it for the first time. So it looked like it was going to follow the Dallas storyline. We'll see. I haven't read any of Hotel Oblivion. I'm waiting to get the slipcase edition, which is coming out this fall. But yeah, those are some favorite books of mine by Dark Horse that I just happened to find in a used bookstore for a lot cheaper than what they're going for now on eBay. Also, another thing from Way and the My Chemical Romance would be the True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys, which is a collection of comics. Basically, if you remember their last album, it was all kind of based on the Killjoys, the band members all dressed up as different members of the Killjoys in this apocalyptic suite. I think Grant Morrison actually played the villain in one of the music videos, which is fantastic. I love Grant Morrison, and especially with his bald head and his sinister grin, he definitely looks like a villain. I just love the colors in this. A lot of people were upset with My Chemical Romance going this direction. Originally they were more, they were kind of always the dark. They were kind of always the goth. And a lot of people felt like they were losing their brand by going so colorful and so, different with the Killjoys. I never thought that was off-brand. I thought it was just an extension of themselves. I thought they were always very creative and very colorful, and this was just them in another universe, in another situation, and I really enjoyed that album for what it was, and I really enjoyed these comics for what they were. And this is another beautiful slipcase by Dark Horse. So again, if I can get them, Dark Horse library editions and slipcases are the way to go for me. Again, I'm going to move some of these comics over here. So what else? Let's see. We've talked about Star Wars. We've talked about Aliens. We've talked about the Gerard Way books. I guess we can go into Hellboy. This was another property that many people love, and that it's had a few chances on screen. The original Ron Perlman movies, although they're beloved by many, they didn't really take off. The second one, I don't know if it bombed at the box office, but it didn't do as well as they hoped for, and so we never got a third one. We did get a reboot with the guy that plays the sheriff from Stranger Things, and you know what? I liked the reboot. I thought it was good, but it was just had too much against it. But the best part of Hellboy are the comics, the Mike Mignola comics, and I don't know if you can really tell the texture, but it's got like this soft texture to these library editions. This isn't a hard kind of cardboard plasticky feel like the rest of these books are. This is like it's almost like a library carpet, type of feel to this. It's a real soft feel to these books. And I have all let's see, what is it? 7 editions of these. There were 6 volumes, and then the finale, Hellboy in Hell. And these are just, they're so beautiful, these books. And the artwork for these, if you've never seen a Hellboy comic, the artwork is just fantastic. And these books were always they flew off the shelves because they're so beautiful. They're really done really well. The artwork in here is just showcased really well. There you go. I'm trying to see, I hope you can see it with the glare there. But these books are just beautiful books. I've got all 7 of them, and they fit really nice on the shelf. And I guess Dark Horse really liked that style of book, because then they came back and did the same thing with Frankenstein, the adaptation of Frankenstein, the Mary Shelley book. And again, it's got that soft kind of carpety feel. And I don't know if you've ever seen this book, but it's got illustrations by Bernie Wrightson. And this isn't like it's not like a graphic novel. It's not like a comic. It's prose, but then with these really nice, so you can see the prose there, but then it has these really nice pieces by Bernie Wrightson. And it's just beautiful. In fact, this book has an introduction by Stephen King, which is awesome. And it's not every page that you get artwork, but my gosh, just look at that. I mean, that is some beautiful artwork on there. And again, this is in a library format, so it's really nice. I don't know if Dark Horse lost the rights to this one, but there was a follow-up book called Frankenstein Alive, and it's in the same size. It's not that carpety feel. You can tell, but by the reflection, this is more of that standard graphic hardcover. This was put out by IDW, so I wonder if Dark Horse lost the rights to that or not. But that original Frankenstein book is gorgeous. I absolutely love it. And it's in the same vein of those Hellboy books. The next book I'm very happy about to own is the Buffy series. And for those that don't know, Buffy was a fantastic 90s show. Fantastic. It was based on the movie. Joss Whedon took that and put his heart and soul into it and made this amazing show with Sarah Michelle Gellar and some amazing other casts. And then it ended with season 7. And so back in 2007, Dark Horse decided, well, hey, let's do a comic of that. And instead of starting it over, they just called the first group of comics season 8, and they did a ton of them. I mean, this is volume 1 of season 8. I think the first couple seasons had 4 volumes, and they had these amazing covers. Now the comics on the inside didn't necessarily always resemble Buffy, but they were still recognizable. You could still see the characters and their faces and everything, and it was neat to see where Buffy and her crew went after season 7, how each of them developed more. These were beautiful books, and it was a long-running series for Dark Horse. It started with season 8, then they did season 9 and season 10. And then they started getting a little less and less comics. Season 11, was the first. Basically, this was one they didn't lose the rights to Disney to. They lost it to Boom Comics. A Boom Comic took over, and everybody was, like me, was just super depressed because for years I've been collecting these can you see that? These library editions. And I wonder if I can turn this over enough to show you. You can see there's my you can see my Hellboy comics there, and then right above them are my Buffy comics. And I had collected all of these over the years, and then Dark Horse loses the rights to it, and I was like, no, my collection is going to be incomplete. Boom decided, and of course they did. It's not like they were going to buy the stuff and then not make the money off of it, but they decided to put out season 11 on library. And as you can see, it pretty much lines up with I think it's slightly shorter than the Dark Horse comics, but it pretty much lines up with them. So they Dark Horse put out their season 8 through 10. Boom Studios put out the library edition of season 11, and I guess in September, season 12, which was the final arc from Dark Horse, is going to come out. So I'm happy that Boom is doing that. I hope Dark Horse, well, I'm guessing Dark Horse isn't getting any money from that. I wish I could buy it from Dark Horse, but I'm glad I'm getting that just because I invested a lot of time in that series, and I love seeing those books up on the shelf, and I would be really sad if I couldn't get the other seasons. So thankfully the library editions for those are coming soon. So I'm just checking here, but I believe that is all that I have for Dark Horse. They've got a lot of other series out there. The Witcher is another series that kind of looks like this the Hellboy, the Frankenstein books. It's got that black kind of carpety cover. And it's got some really nice artwork. Their Witcher series. They also have The Last Airbender. They have what else do they have? Stranger Things, and then some other series that are still under their umbrella. I believe they still have Umbrella Academy. I'm assuming. Well, yeah, they do because they're coming out with the third book for that, the Hotel Oblivion. So I have been a huge fan of Dark Horse since I was a kid, and it's sad. It's sad to see them losing another property. And I mean, especially in times like these, when you lose something that big, it's hard to recover. Um, and it's sad. I feel like especially with Aliens and Predator, Dark Horse has earned it. And they've spent 30 years with those properties, and they've definitely taken care of them. They've put in a lot of care and effort into those. And Critical Role is another big one that they have right now, and I haven't gotten into Critical Role myself yet, but I know a lot of people that have, and so they've been bringing that to the comic front. They've done some other things with Mystery Science Theater, with Polar, with Zelda, even with Berserk, which is something I'm starting to get into. American Gods, Fight Club, Halo. So they've gotten other things under their umbrella right now. So it's not like they're left out in the cold with nothing. But they've put 30 years into Aliens and Predator and AVP, and it's kind of sad to see them lose that. But I'm not going to hate on Disney for taking what they bought. They bought the rights for it. Of course, they're going to want to own it. But unlike Star Wars, I'm not sure what world it would be in where it would be under Disney. I mean, maybe they'll put it out under Marvel. Marvel has the ability to have more edgy comics, especially if it's under they used to have Marvel Knights. I'm not sure if Disney still does that. And of course, Disney has a lot of other subsidiary companies that they can put out more adult content. But comic wise, I wonder how they're going to do that. I feel like they could have just struck a deal with Dark Horse. I know Dark Horse and DC have usually been partners in the past, but I feel like Disney could have put together a deal that allowed Dark Horse to continue to put out their comics. Of course, Disney would have some creative control over that. But, I mean, 30 years of great comics from Dark Horse. I wonder what Disney's going to do with it. Are they just going to not make Aliens and Predators and AVP comics anymore? Are they going to continue it? Are they going to reboot it? Are they going to only do things that would be promos for movies that they do? Which is sad because Dark Horse didn't spend 30 years of promotions for the movies. In fact, it was 30 years of content because they had better content than the movies. If you were disappointed by Predator 2, which, it has some good moments, but it's not as good as Predator. If you were disappointed by AVP, if you were disappointed by Aliens 3 or Aliens 4 or, the more recent Predator movie, if you were disappointed in those, you could go back and you could read these comics. They were deeper. They were more graphic. They were more, story based and character based, and they were a bigger world, even though it wasn't on screen. It was neat to see a company like Dark Horse take care of those properties, and so I wish Disney would, strike some kind of deal with them, but it sounds like that's not going to happen. So Dark Horse is going to finish up some things. I know recently they put out a graphic novel version of the original Aliens 3 story idea by Gibson, I believe was the writer. They're also putting out an original adaptation or the comic adaptation of another one of the Aliens movies. I'm not sure which one it is right now, but they've got a couple alien things in the works right now that I guess they're going to be able to finish putting out until the end of the year. So I'm guessing they'll finish up on those. And then starting on January 1st, it'll be all in the hands of Disney. So I'm seriously doubting we're going to have Aliens and Predator comics on January 1st from Disney. But who knows? We'll see. We'll see. So anyway, I really do love Dark Horse. I love everything that they've given me over the years, and I look forward to checking out more titles from them in the future. And especially now, I want to support companies that I truly adore. And when they take a loss like this, they need support even more. So yeah, so thanks for joining me for my look through of my Dark Horse collection. Hope it wasn't too boring for you. If you have Dark Horse books that I don't have, like the Berserk books, I've been tempted to get those really nice hardcover Berserk books. If you have Dark Horse books that you want to chat about, throw them in the comments on the Facebook video or on the YouTube video. Tell me ones that I should read. I know there's some other aliens books that I don't have in here. I've got some comics. I'm mainly just focused on the graphic novel versions, but if there's some from Aliens or Predator that you were like, oh man, have you read this story arc? Let me know. I probably have, but if I haven't, I'll definitely check it out. Let me know of other Dark Horse stuff that you love. I mean, they've been around for decades, and they haven't been around that long without more fans like me. So tell me what you like. Tell me about your thoughts about the whole matter of them losing these properties, and what you are hopeful for in the future as far as some of these properties. And yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. So anyway, thanks for joining me. And yeah, I hope you have a great evening. And yeah, we'll see you next time. See ya.